Close your eyes and imagine a world where the boundary between the living and the departed is not a stone wall, but a thin, frayed thread of silk. In the flickering warmth of a campfire or the sterile glow of a smartphone screen, a name is whispered that carries the weight of a 1,000-year journey through the dust of India and the dark forests of the Balkans. Mullo. In the language of the Romani people, it means simply the one who is dead. But do not let the simplicity of the name deceive you. This is no mere ghost, no Hollywood phantom of capes and castles. The Mullo is a physical, breathing corruption of the natural order, a revenant driven by a hunger that transcends the grave, a thirst for the life essence that was stolen from it too soon. Tonight, we step into the shadow where the ancient ways meet the digital age. We will uncover the genesis of this malice, the bizarre physicalities of the soft-bodied undead, and the terrifying moment when the sun reaches its zenith and the world belongs to the dead. Prepare yourselves. The shadow is rising. To understand the Mullo, we must go back to the beginning of beginnings, before time, space, or light had a name. In the ancient Dacian and Romani cosmogony, the world was born from the waters of chaos, a boundless ocean known as Apa Sambite. From the froth of these primordial waters, a cosmic tree sprouted, and upon its branches 2 beings took shape. One was Fartat, the sworn brother, the face of God and order. The other was Nefartat, the enemy, the face of the devil and chaos. While Fartat sought to bring light and harmony, Nefartat possessed a wild, dark imagination. He experimented with the clay of the earth, creating giants, shapeshifters, and monsters. It was Nefartat who birthed the first vampire spirit, specifically to be a blight upon humanity. This is why the Mullo is not merely a soul that refuses to leave. It is a creature born of a metaphysical enmity, a soldier in a war between light and darkness that has raged since the first ripple on the waters of chaos. What does it look like, this thing that returns from the earth? Forget the pale, aristocratic beauty of the cinema. The folkloric Mullo is a physiological nightmare. In the legends of the Balkans, a Mullo is often described as having a soft body, as if it were a creature without bones or structure. Some describe them as slippery or jelly-like, living only a short, intense second life after their first has ended. Their physical traits are a collection of the grotesque. Hair that grows until it reaches their feet, teeth like iron used to gnaw through the frozen earth of a winter grave, and a spine that extends into a hairy, primitive tail. Often, they wear the white clothes of their burial, their faces twisted and flushed red with the blood they have stolen. But perhaps the most chilling physical trait is not what they have, but what they lack. A Mullo casts no shadow. In the mirror, there is only an empty space where a person should be. This is because they are seen not with the physical eye, but with the mind's eye of their victims, a psychic projection of a corpse that refuses to rot. And while we fear the midnight hour, the Romani tradition warns of a different time. The Mullo is most powerful at the exact stroke of noon, at the moment when the sun is highest and the shadow of the living vanishes. Everything under the sky belongs to the realm of death. How does one become this thing? It is not always a choice, and it is rarely the result of a single bite. The transition into a Mullo is often the result of a life lived in sin, a sudden violent death, or, most tragically, the failure of the living to respect the dead. If a burial rite is incomplete, or if a relative keeps the deceased's clothing instead of destroying it, the spirit is tethered to this world by a thread of resentment. There is also the infection of the shadow. In the days following death, while the soul lingers near the body in the form of a bird, the corpse is vulnerable. If a black dog or a black cat jumps over the coffin, the spirit of the vampire enters the flesh. The most dangerous of all are the uncompleted ones, the deceased children and the stillborn. Known as moroi, they return with a malicious envy for the life they never tasted, hunting their own parents and kin to feed on their vitality. In the folklore of the Romani and the people of the Balkans, death is not a final goodbye. It is often a dark, obsessive homecoming. While Hollywood focuses on the vampire's thirst for blood, the ancient legends whisper of a far more intimate hunger. The Mullo is a creature of deep atavistic desires, driven by a lust that even the cold silence of the grave cannot quench. Imagine a widow in a quiet village. She sleeps, but her dreams are heavy. She feels a familiar weight upon the bed, a touch she thought was lost to the earth. This is the return of the Mullo, the male revenant, who refuses to let go of his living wife. He does not come with fangs or violence. He comes with the ghost of a husband's affection. He returns to continue his marital life, to inhabit the domestic space, and most chillingly, to seek the warmth of his former partner's bed. But this is no romantic reunion. The touch of the Mullo is a slow-acting poison. In Romani cosmology, he does not always drink blood. Instead, he is an energetic parasite. Each night he visits, he draws out her yang energy, her life essence, her aura, her very vitality. The signs are subtle at first. The woman grows pale, her eyes lose their fire. She becomes frail and withered, a ghost of her former self, while the corpse in the grave remains unnaturally fresh, its face flushed a vibrant, mocking red. It is a tragic exchange. The dead thrives on the beauty of the living, until there is nothing left but two husks. This belief was so potent that it moved from legend into legal reality. Historical records from Serbia tell of widows who, finding themselves pregnant months after their husband's burial, would swear under oath that the deceased had returned in the night to father the child. While some may see this as a convenient social cover, for the community, the fear was absolute. There were even accounts of living men, fake vampires, who would wrap themselves in white shrouds to sneak into the homes of women they desired, preying on this fairy superstition to find a way past locked doors. But what happens when the boundary is truly crossed? What is the fruit of a union between a corpse and the living, born from the lust of a vampire father and a human mother? The Dhampir is a biological anomaly, a creature of two worlds. His name, rooted in the Albanian words dam and pyr meaning to drink with teeth, is a dark irony, for the Dhampir himself does not crave blood. Instead, he is born with the very powers of the nightmare that sired him. Legends describe these children as having untamed, pitch-black hair and an energetic, courageous spirit. Yet, they bear the marks of their father's corruption. Some are said to be born with soft bodies, lacking a skeletal structure or nails, as if they were made of the same slippery, jelly-like essence as the undead. Others are recognized by a deep mark on their spine, a primitive, hairy tail. But the Dhampir's greatest gift, and his heaviest burden, is his sight. He is the only being who can see the invisible Mullo. While the village cowers in fear of a shadow they cannot track, the Dhampir sees the predator clearly. In the Balkan villages of the past, being a Dhampir was not just a myth. It was a profession. These vampire sons would travel from town to town, hired by desperate communities to detect and destroy the unseen revenants. They would perform ritualistic magic, using their heightened senses and supernatural strength to find the graves of the restless dead. They were the ultimate paradox, the child of the monster, destined to be the monster's most effective executioner. The lust of the Mullo creates a cycle that never truly ends. It begins with an obsessive love that defies the grave, leads to a parasitic draining of life, and culminates in the birth of a hunter who must spend his life purging the world of his own father's shadow. As we journey deeper into the shadow of the Mullo, we encounter a legend so surreal, so utterly bizarre, that it sounds like a dark fever dream. Yet, For generations of Romani Muslim communities in the regions of Serbia and Kosovo, this was no mere campfire story. It was a glitch in the natural order, a reminder that the infection of the undead is not limited to the flesh of men. Welcome to the border of the garden, where the harvest itself can turn predatory. In the quiet, dark corners of winter storehouses, among the damp scent of earth and drying vines, a strange transformation was feared. It was believed that two specific fruits, the pumpkin and the watermelon, possessed a latent, dangerous sensitivity to the presence of the Mullo. But how does a botanical life form become a monster? According to the accounts of ethnologist Tadomir Vukanovic, the trigger is time. Nature has its limits, and the undead thrive on the violation of those limits. Any watermelon or pumpkin kept for more than 10 days, or any fruit left unconsumed after the feast of Christmas, becomes a vessel for the vampiric spirit. The transformation begins in the dark. It starts with a sound, a low, rhythmic, vibrating growl. Roll, roll, roll. The fruits begin to stir, shaking themselves as if trying to wake from a dream. The villagers whispered that they were fighting one another in the shadows. Then, the final, chilling sign appears on the smooth green rind of a watermelon or the ribbed skin of a pumpkin. A single dark drop of blood wells up. In that moment, the fruit ceases to be food. It is now a Mullo. Imagine the scene. A family huddled together at night, hearing the soft, heavy thump-thump of a possessed gourd rolling across the floor of the stable, or through the rooms of the house. These vegetable vampires do not have fangs or claws. They cannot drink your blood or tear your throat, but they are a psychic pestilence. They roll around the legs of the living, growling and pestering, a physical manifestation of nature gone wrong. There is a legendary patience to this malice as well. In the village of Romani, it was believed that if a hollowed-out pumpkin, used as a water siphon, remained unopened for 3 long years, it would inevitably wake up as a vampire. It is as if the vacuum within the fruit creates a space that the darkness is only too happy to fill. But how do you kill a ghost that lives in a rind? The Romani did not use stakes or silver for these botanical revenants. The ritual was one of purification by fire and water. The infected fruit would be gathered and plunged into a massive pot of boiling water. Once the spirit was scalded out, the water was poured away into the earth. But the cleansing was not over. The fruit had to be scrubbed vigorously with a broom, then thrown far from the house. Finally, the broom itself, now tainted by the touch of the vegetable Mullo, was cast into the flames and burned to ash. To the modern mind, the vampire pumpkin is a curiosity, perhaps even a joke. But in the world of the Mullo, there are no jokes. This legend illustrates a profound belief that the hunger of the dead is a rot that can seep into anything. The tools we use, the beds we sleep in, and even the very fruit of the earth that sustains us. It reminds us that at high noon, or on the 10th day of a harvest, the boundary between the living world and the realm of death is as thin as the skin of a ripening melon. Imagine a moonless night in a village where the wind doesn't just howl. It whispers names. Here, the living do not sleep. They keep watch. In the world of the Mullo, safety is not a feeling. It is a construction of iron, thorns, and ancient alchemy. The Romani and Balkan people understood a terrifying metaphysical truth. The evil of the dead cannot be reasoned with, nor can it be shamed into silence. To stop a Mullo, you must physically bind the soul to the clay of the earth, or destroy the vessel entirely. This was a war fought with the most primordial of weapons. The first line of defense begins at the edge of the open grave. To prevent a corpse from ever rising, the living perform a ritual of nailing the soul. Imagine the heavy silence as family members place small bits of steel or iron over the eyes, inside the ears, and into the mouth of the departed. They are sealing the windows and doors of the spirit, But the most visceral act is the anchoring. Steel needles or iron forks are driven with precision into the heart or the navel. This is not an act of cruelty. It is a desperate attempt to pin the spirit to the body, ensuring that when the Mullo tries to rise at the stroke of noon, it finds itself chained to its own decaying heart. If the grave fails to hold the shadow, the home must become a fortress. You have heard the Hollywood tales of garlic, but in the Balkans, it is an olfactory armor. On the most dangerous nights, the Aves of St. George, St. Andrew, and the threshold of the new year, the scent of garlic becomes a thick, protective shroud. Villagers would not just hang bulbs, they would anoint the very veins of the house. They smeared garlic and onions in the shape of a cross upon the doors, the window frames, and even deep within the chimneys, for the Mullo is like smoke, capable of slipping through the smallest of gaps. Inside the house, a strange psychological warfare took place. Every dish and bowl was turned upside down. The logic was as eerie as it was simple. To prevent the ghost from finding a place to sit or a vessel to hide in, making the home a cold, uninviting space for a returning soul. One of the most fascinating defenses relies on a peculiar glitch in the vampiric mind, an uncontrollable, obsessive-compulsive hunger for order. The Romani would scatter seeds, millet, poppy, or proso across the threshold of the home or around the burial mound. A Mullo, driven by a dark arithmetic madness, is compelled to count every single grain before it can continue its hunt. The living would sleep behind these barriers of tiny seeds, knowing that the predator was outside, trapped in a mathematical prison, desperately counting until the first rays of the sun or the arrival of dawn sent it back to the dust. But what if the predator is invisible? What if the village is plagued by a Mullo that casts no shadow? To find the unseen, the community turned to the purity of nature. They would find a 7-year-old boy, a child of absolute purity, and dress him in white. He was placed upon a white stallion that had never stumbled, and led into the heart of the cemetery. Imagine the tension as the villagers watched the horse. Where the stallion stopped and refused to step, where it snorted in terror at seemingly empty air, there lay the grave of the vampire. The animal, with its untainted senses, could see the psychic stain that the human eye could not. When detection was confirmed, the rites turned radical. The neutrality of the grave was over. The body had to be unmade. The exhumation often revealed the terrifying signs of the Mullo. A face flushed a mocking red, eyes wide open, and limbs twisted as if trying to climb through the wood of the coffin. In these final moments, the heart was cut out and burned to ash. In a ritual of grim immunization, the family would take those ashes, mix them with water, and drink them. They believed that by consuming the remains of their cursed kin, they gained a spiritual resistance, a way to ensure that the blood of the vampire would never again recognize the blood of the living. These rites were the ultimate human response to the unknown. They show us that in the darkness, humanity does not just hide, it fights back with every tool it has, from a single grain of millet to the cold edge of a steel needle. As we move into the 21st century, we might think these irrational beliefs have vanished in the glare of our screens. But the Mullo has simply evolved. In the digital world, superstitions have not died. They have been recontextualized. We find young adults using manifestation apps and evil eye, emojis on social media, performing the same psychological rituals of control that their ancestors performed with salt and steel. We attribute bad luck to algorithms. We don't understand, endowing our machines with human emotions and intentions, much like the ancient Romani endowed the spirits of the dead with physical form. The Mullo is no longer just in the grave. It is in the ghost in the machine, the technological superstition that bridges our hyper-rational world with the magical thinking of our past. The story of the Mullo, is the story of the human condition. It is our attempt to explain the unexplainable, to give a face to our fear of death, and to find comfort in a world of uncertainty. Whether it is a red-eyed revenant in a white shroud, or a lucky repost on a glowing screen, the Mullo reminds us that the dead never truly leave us. They remain in our stories, in our rituals, and in the quiet moment of high noon, when the shadow disappears and we are left alone with our thoughts. The shadow is gone, but the dead are still waiting.